All right, so get ready because today we are going deep into Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, ever thought about why you make certain financial decisions?
Mhm.
Turns out it could be more about your childhood or even just plain luck than you'd think.
Okay, yeah.
That's kind of what we'll be unpacking in this deep dive.
I'm intrigued already. We always think of like money as logic and spreadsheets and all that.
Right.
But Housel is saying like it's really our past experiences and our emotions. It's way more about that.
Yeah.
Think about it. Has it ever hit you like how your own childhood, like if money was tight back then or if your family made some big financial decision,
Yeah.
like how that might be messing with your money choices today?
It's true. It's
Yeah.
like we've all got this financial fingerprint, right? Based on where we came from.
Totally, yeah.
Housel even uses John F. Kennedy as an example.
Oh, how so?
Did you know, his family, they actually got richer during the Depression. Servants, bigger houses, the whole 9 yards, while everyone else was struggling.
Wild.
He didn't even realize how different his life was until he got to Harvard.
That's a perfect example, right, of how those early experiences, they totally shape your money mindset.
Yeah.
JFK, he had all this wealth, but never went through the Depression hardship personally.
Right.
So naturally, that colored how he saw economics and policy stuff later on.
It's crazy how we can all be looking at the same financial stuff,
Yeah.
but see it so differently, right?
Totally different worlds.
Yeah.
And speaking of seeing things differently, Housel then gets into this whole thing about stories, the stories we tell ourselves about money, especially the danger of only looking at the extremes.
Oh, yeah.
We love those billionaire stories or those epic financial fails.
Right.
We're drawn to them because they're captivating, but the problem is they can be super misleading. They make us think, oh, success is just brilliance or it's some huge fatal flaw, when really it's often luck and timing playing a way bigger role. It's like trying to learn basketball by only watching Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
You miss all the basic stuff that actually gets you there.
Right, the fundamentals. It's easy to get starstruck by the successes and miss the less glamorous,
Yeah.
but way more important principles, right?
Exactly. So if we shouldn't be learning from those super outliers,
Right, where should we be looking for guidance?
House is saying look for the broader patterns, the common threads in lots of people's experiences.
Okay.
The more common it is, the more likely it applies to us too. Think about how many people we all know who got in trouble chasing those get-rich-quick schemes.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pattern, a warning sign we should pay attention to.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You know that story about Jesse Livermore, the trader, really got to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the one who made and lost fortunes multiple times.
Oh, right.
Definitely fallen for those easy money promises before myself. Thankfully, didn't end as tragically for me.
Yeah. Livermore's story, it's a classic. Even brilliant people, they can get swept up in that risk and speculation.
Yeah.
Reminds us, real success, it's not hitting the jackpot. It's more about consistent, smart decisions over a long time. And this brings us to, this other crucial concept, the power of enough.
Okay, the power of enough. Let's break that down.
So it's about this idea, chasing more. It doesn't mean happy or fulfilled, right?
Yeah.
In fact, it can mess us up financially, even if we're doing well by other standards. When's the last time you were truly content with what you had? Money-wise, I mean.
Oh, man. It's like that goalpost is always moving. You hit one target, then you're already aiming for the next.
Exactly. Housel says the hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving.
Wow.
And he's onto something. Our expectations, they rise with our achievements, so we're always wanting more.
Yeah.
What if instead we appreciated what we have now instead of constantly wanting?
It's a whole different way of thinking, right? Redefining success. It's not just the amount, but how content we are.
Yeah, and that contentment, being okay with enough, it's huge for long-term financial well-being. Now, here's another fascinating thing from the book. Time and building wealth. You know, Warren Buffett, everyone calls him an investing genius.
Oh, yeah, the Oracle of Omaha, right.
Yeah, but here's the thing. A big chunk of his wealth is because he's been investing for, over 70 years.
Wow.
Imagine if he'd retired at 60 like most people.
Oh, man, his fortune would be way smaller.
Exactly. Housel did the math. Buffett would be worth a tiny fraction of what he is now if he'd invested for a shorter time.
That's crazy. So it's not just being brilliant, it's staying in the game for the long haul.
Exactly. Time. It's like the unsung hero of wealth. To show this, Housel compares Buffett to Jim Simons,
Oh, yeah?
hedge fund guy, known for those crazy high returns.
Right.
But even with those, Simons can't match Buffett's overall wealth simply because he hasn't been investing as long.
So what's the lesson here? Short-term wins or playing the long game?
Housel says it's the consistency, the longevity of your investing that really matters. It's like a tree. You gotta nurture it for years before you get the fruit. And speaking of long-term, let's get into compounding.
All right, compounding. Sounds complicated. What's the deal?
It might sound complex, but it's simple. Imagine a snowball rolling down a hill.
Okay, yeah.
Starts small, but it gathers more snow, gets bigger and bigger, faster and faster.
I see, yeah.
That's compounding with money.
Yeah.
Your returns earn returns, and those earn more returns, this huge snowball over time.
So it's not about getting those crazy high returns all at once.
Right.
It's more about, like, decent returns but consistently for a long time.
Exactly. You don't need to be a stock-picking wizard. Just invest consistently, let it grow, and you'll see amazing results. Like the saying goes, best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is now.
I love that. Reminds me of something Housel said about room for error in investing. He used this analogy with blackjack card counters.
Oh, yeah. He was saying even when the odds are good, smart card counters, they don't bet everything.
Right.
They know they could still be wrong. There's always a chance things go sideways.
Yeah.
So they leave room for error in how they play.
So what does that mean for our own finances? Should we all be hitting the casino?
Not quite. It's about applying that same caution to our investments, our financial plans overall.
Okay.
Like acknowledging we can't predict the future perfectly, so we need some safety built in to handle surprises.
Like having a financial cushion.
Exactly. That buffer for any storm, like 6 months of expenses saved if you lose your job, or investing in lots of different things so you're not all in on one thing. That's your margin of safety.
Makes sense, like that emergency fund everyone talks about, but maybe thinking bigger picture.
Right. It's about knowing things might go wrong and having a plan so it doesn't totally derail you.
This deep dive is already changing how I think about money.
That's what happens when you explore this psychology side of things. It's not just numbers, it's about us.
Yeah.
Understanding how we act and making choices that fit our values and goals. And speaking of choices, Housel has interesting things to say about rationality, or maybe the lack of it, with money.
Oh, if it's good, I can tell what you mean.
So he's saying aiming for perfect rationality in our money decisions, it can actually backfire.
How so?
We're not robots, right? We're human, driven by emotions, biases, all that. So instead of trying to be perfectly rational, which is probably impossible anyway,
Right.
he says be pretty reasonable instead.
I like that. Pretty reasonable. Much more attainable.
Right. It's not saying logic goes out the window, but we got to acknowledge we're not perfect and make choices we can actually stick with.
So finding that balance between, like, logic and gut feeling. Making choices that feel right.
Yeah.
Even if they're not perfectly optimized on paper.
Exactly. And he uses a really interesting historical example. Ever heard of Julius Wagner Jareg?
Nope.
He was this doctor, used fever to treat syphilis.
Fever. To treat a disease. That sounds counterintuitive.
It was super controversial. People thought he was nuts. But he realized fevers, even though they're uncomfortable, they actually help fight infections. And guess what? He won a Nobel Prize for it.
So sometimes being a little irrational can lead to breakthroughs.
Absolutely. It's saying, don't be afraid to question the conventional wisdom
Right.
or do something that seems unconventional if you have good reason to think it'll work. Now, let's shift gears a bit and look at another fascinating idea from the book. The power of narratives, especially about the economy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's he saying about narratives?
He's saying that the stories we tell ourselves about the economy, about the future, they can have a huge impact on what we do.
Yeah.
Even if those stories aren't totally accurate or complete, it's like wearing colored glasses changes how you see everything.
So we're filtering our financial decisions through the lens of our own stories.
Exactly. And he points out this human tendency to overestimate how likely bad things are, especially with money. Like we're wired for pessimism.
Oh, tell me about it. I could be a master catastrophizer. Why do you think we do that?
Well, Housel's saying it's partly because those negative events, they're more vivid, more memorable than positive ones. Think about the news. It's all conflict, disaster, doom and gloom. It triggers our fear, makes us decide based on anxiety, not logic.
So our brains are giving more weight to the bad stuff, even if it's statistically less likely to happen.
That's it. And this impacts our financial decisions big time. We might not invest because we're scared of losing money,
Yeah.
or we hoard cash thinking the economy's going to crash. But those fears, they're often based on stories, not reality.
This is making me think about how I see risk and opportunity. Maybe I need to step back, examine the story I'm telling myself
Yeah.
before I make any big financial moves.
That's a great takeaway. It's exactly what Housel wants us to do. Be more aware of the stories shaping our view, challenge our assumptions, and find a more balanced perspective.
So it's not about ignoring those negative stories completely, but like putting them in perspective.
Right. He even uses this thought-provoking alien example. Imagine an alien landing on Earth in 2009, right after the financial crisis. They'd be like, what's all the fuss about?
Yeah.
The world hadn't physically changed that much, but the story had. And that caused a huge drop in confidence in spending.
Wow, that's powerful. It's like we all just decided things were terrible, even though the fundamentals were mostly the same.
Exactly. That's the power of narratives. They impact how we act, even if they're not fully real.
Okay, I'm definitely going to be more mindful of the money stories I'm telling myself from now on. This deep dive is changing how I think about my finances already.
That's awesome. And that's just the beginning. There's so much more to uncover in the psychology of money. We've explored how our past shapes our views, the danger of focusing on extremes, the power of enough,
Great.
the magic of compounding, the need for room for error, and how sometimes irrational choices can lead to breakthroughs. Plus, we've learned about the allure of pessimism and how narratives shape our financial decisions.
Wow, we've covered a lot. It feels like we've just scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's still so much more to explore. Buckle up and get ready for part 2 of our deep dive into the psychology of money.
Welcome back. I'm still kind of reeling from all that stuff we talked about in part 1
Yeah.
about the psychology of money.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild how much our emotions and all that
Yeah.
really affect our money decisions, right?
It really is. And there's even more to uncover. Ready to go deeper into this money psychology stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. Where do we go from here?
Well, we were talking about long-term thinking,
Right.
but how do we actually do that, put it into practice? Housel gets into this concept that's key for lasting success, compounding. Remember that snowball effect?
Yeah.
That's compounding in action.
Right. Like those returns start earning their own returns.
Yeah.
Building momentum over time.
Exactly. And Housel really hammers this home by looking at legends in finance, Jesse Livermore, this brilliant but kind of tragic trader.
Mm-hmm.
And then Warren Buffett, the patient long-term investor we talked about.
Buffett Livermore. He was
Yeah.
the guy who made and lost fortunes over and over, right?
Yep, that's him. Boom and bust story.
Yeah.
He was amazing at reading the market, making those huge risky bets, but couldn't resist the whole speculation thing. And eventually it caught up with him, lost everything.
Oof.
A cautionary tale, right? Chasing quick riches versus having a solid plan for the long haul.
It's a good reminder. Even the smartest people can get sucked in by the excitement
Yeah.
and make impulsive decisions,
For sure. That's where Buffett's way of doing things is totally different. Remember that quote, "My favorite holding period is forever."
Oh, yeah.
He's all about finding strong companies, holding on to them, letting those returns compound over time.
It's like he's playing a whole different game.
Yeah.
Not about those short-term swings. He's building a legacy.
Exactly. And this
Yeah.
goes back to that room for error concept.
Right. Right. That buffer we need to protect ourselves from. Unexpected stuff. And mistakes we're bound to make. But honestly, sometimes Housel's advice sounds a little, I don't know,
Yeah.
overly cautious. He suggests having enough cash to cover a whole year's worth of expenses.
Right.
Isn't that kind of extreme, especially now with interest rates so low?
It might seem that way, but think about it. Having that financial cushion, it gives you huge peace of mind
Yeah.
and flexibility. It's
Yeah.
being ready for those what-if situations. What if you lose your job? Sudden medical bills, market crashes. Having that cash keeps you from making rash decisions under pressure.
That's true. It's not just the money, it's the emotional security, knowing you can handle those curveballs.
Exactly. You don't have to panic sell investments at the worst time or go into debt you don't need. It gives you mental space to weather the storm without hurting your long-term finances.
Okay, I'm seeing the value in having that extra cushion now. It's like insurance against whatever life throws at you financially.
Exactly. And speaking of uncertainty, Housel talks about this interesting thing called the barbelled personality. It's about being both optimistic and paranoid about your finances.
Wait, optimistic and paranoid, those seem like total opposites.
Right. But he's saying this combo, it's actually the key to long-term success. Be positive about the future, but also super aware of what could stop you from reaching your goals.
So like healthy dose of realism mixed with a strong belief you can overcome challenges.
You got it. It's knowing setbacks are going to happen, but trusting you'll adapt and bounce back.
I see how that would help with investing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
markets are always up and down, always some new crisis.
Right. Housel looks at the history of the U.S. economy to show this. Think about all the recessions, wars, financial crises.
Yeah,
But despite all that, the economy's kept growing over the long term.
it's a good reminder. Progress isn't always a straight line. There'll be bumps, but they don't have to derail us.
Exactly. That's the whole barbelled personality thing. It's embracing that life's messy and being ready for surprises.
Okay, so how do we actually use this barbelled thinking with our money?
It starts with accepting that risk is part of investing. You can't avoid it completely,
Yeah.
but you manage it by diversifying, having that long-term view, and keeping that margin of safety.
So not about eliminating risk,
Yeah.
but understanding and minimizing it.
Right on. Be smart, be strategic, but also be okay with not being able to control everything.
This is making me rethink how I see risk. I'm pretty risk averse, maybe too much.
Well, caution is better than recklessness for sure, but it's about finding that balance. No risk, no reward, right?
That's true. It's like finding that sweet spot where you're comfortable taking some risk, but not letting fear stop you completely.
Now, let's switch gears a bit and look at this other idea Halsell brings up, freedom. He says the best thing about money is it gives you control over your time.
I feel that.
Yeah.
I definitely felt stuck because of money, you know. Having the choice of how to spend your time, that's priceless.
Absolutely. And Housel, he shares this story about when he was an investment banking intern, making tons of money. But it cost him long hours, crazy pressure, no control over his schedule. He felt trapped, even with the big paycheck.
It's like they say time is money, but maybe it's more like money can buy you time,
Mm-hmm.
or at least the freedom to choose how you use it.
That's a great way to put it. It's something we forget when we're chasing success. We're so focused on the next promotion, the bigger salary, the fancy stuff.
Yeah.
We forget about the real value of time and freedom.
And it's not just about leisure time. It's about having the power to choose what matters to you,
Right.
whether it's family time, hobbies, or just relaxing and recharging.
Exactly. It's designing a life that's financially secure, but also lets you live on your own terms.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Housel points out this paradox. The U.S., the richest country in the world,
Yeah.
it hasn't actually gotten happier as it's gotten wealthier.
Yeah.
Like, we've traded our time for bigger houses and stuff. But is all that really making us happier? That's the question, isn't it? Housel says the trade-off isn't always worth it. True wealth is about having the power to choose what brings you joy, no matter how much money you have.
It's about that balance between being comfortable and truly happy.
Right. Now let's get into this idea that really challenges how we see wealth. Wealth is what you don't see.
Ooh, this is a good one. Housel said we think of wealth as those flashy cars, vacations.
Yeah.
But real wealth is something deeper.
Exactly. He's saying it's about having the resources to make choices without feeling pressured or anxious. It's about that inner feeling of security, of having enough no matter your actual net worth.
So it's not how much you have, but how much you don't need.
Exactly. It's being able to say no to things that don't fit your values
Right.
without feeling limited by money. It's the peace of mind knowing you're prepared for whatever comes your way.
I love that. It shifts the focus from stuff to something much more meaningful, right?
Yeah.
Inner freedom and security.
Exactly. And Housel uses Rihanna as an example. Super successful singer, almost went bankrupt despite all her money.
Like Rihanna bankrupt.
Yeah.
How?
It shows even super successful people can overspend, live beyond their means. Wealth isn't just what you earn, it's how you manage it.
So even someone like Rihanna can struggle if they don't understand money basics and have self-control.
Exactly. That's why Housel's all about saving, investing consistently no matter your income. You don't have to be rich to build wealth. He loves frugality, living below your means. He even has this equation: savings, income, ego.
Wow, that's powerful. Like, the less you need to impress people,
Yeah,
the more you can save for your future.
you got it. It's about spending based on what matters to you, not what society says or trying to keep up with everyone else.
True wealth isn't what you show off. It's those choices you make behind the scenes, the
Yeah,
investments you make in yourself, the security you build for your family.
Exactly. And remember those unseen returns we talked about? Housel's big on having that financial cushion, not just
Yeah.
practically, but for the freedom and options it gives you. You can take risks, change careers, start a business, even retire early if you've got that solid foundation.
Like, your savings become a way to empower yourself, to go after your dreams, create a life that truly fits you.
Right on. And speaking of creating the life you want, Housel points out how work is changing. Technology, globalization, they're making competition tougher.
Yeah.
Harder for people to feel secure in their jobs.
That's a real struggle for a lot of people now, right?
Yeah,
Job market's changing fast. Traditional careers aren't as stable.
exactly. So Housel says in this new world, having control over your time, your options, that's more valuable than ever. It's not just about the paycheck. It's about being able to adapt to change, make choices that fit your needs as they change.
So it's not just climbing the ladder anymore. It's more like creating multiple income streams,
Hmm.
building skills that can transfer to different jobs, getting a range of experiences so you're adaptable.
You got it. It's almost an entrepreneurial mindset, even if you're not running your own business.
This deep dive is making me see my whole relationship with money differently. It's not just about numbers anymore.
Yeah.
It's about understanding myself, making choices that fit my values, building a life that's both secure and fulfilling.
That's the core of what Housel's saying. Go beyond just the rational side of money.
Yeah.
Embrace the human side, our emotions, biases, all of that.
It's about remembering money is a tool to create a meaningful life, but we get to decide what that looks like.
Exactly. Now, before we get into the final part of our deep dive, think about what's hit home for you so far. What surprised you? What challenged your ideas about money?
Honestly, so much has resonated. But I think the biggest thing is this wealth is what you don't see idea. It's totally changed how I used to think about money.
It is powerful, isn't it? It gets to the heart of why we make financial decisions.
Absolutely. I can't wait to hear what else Housel has to share. Ready for part 3?
I am. Let's
Okay.
keep going.
All right. Welcome back to our deep dive into the psychology of money. We've been on this journey exploring those hidden forces that shape our financial lives, like our childhoods and the stories we tell ourselves about money. So what else is in store for us in this final part?
We've covered a lot, but Housel still has some really insightful stuff, especially about navigating the financial world, how to make good decisions when things feel so unpredictable.
Okay, yeah, that's a big one. What does he say about making those sound decisions when everything feels kind of crazy?
Well, he starts by highlighting something we've all felt. The power of stories, especially those stories we tell ourselves about the economy, the future. He says those stories can have a huge influence, even if they're not totally based in reality.
Right, like that alien thought experiment. Just a shift in this story can change how we act, even if the facts haven't changed much.
Exactly. And Housel points out how we tend to overestimate the chances of bad things happening, especially with money. It's like we're drawn to focus on the downsides, the what ifs, the worst case scenarios, that pessimism thing we talked about.
Yeah, and he used that example of the Russian professor who predicted the U.S. would collapse back in 2010, right?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Totally wrong, thankfully. But it gained a lot of attention, fueled a lot of fear.
Perfect example of how we get swept up in fear-mongering, especially when it's a good story. It plays on our anxieties about the future, and we might make decisions based on fear, not logic.
So how do we get out of that negativity trap? How do we see things more clearly about the economy, our financial future?
Housel suggests a few things. First, be more aware of the stories we're buying into. Where is our information coming from? Who are we listening to? Are we surrounded by doom and gloom, or are we getting a range of perspectives?
Right, like garbage in, garbage out. If we're always feeding ourselves negativity, of course we'll feel anxious about the future.
Exactly. We got to be careful what we're consuming, actively look for sources that are more balanced.
Makes sense. So it's not about ignoring the risks, pretending everything's perfect,
No.
but it's more about putting those risks in perspective, not letting fear take over.
Right. Housel also reminds us that progress, it often happens slowly, so we don't notice it. But setbacks, those are sudden, dramatic. Think about it. Good news, it's rarely big news. But a market crash, a recession, that's all over the news for weeks.
It's true. Good news is no news. We miss all the steady progress because we're bombarded with these crisis stories.
Exactly. And that can really distort how we see things, especially with money in the markets. We overestimate the bad stuff because it's more memorable, but we underestimate that long-term growth, that resilience.
So how do we fight that? How do we train our brains to see the positive, the progress, what's going right?
Housel has a couple of ideas. First, zoom out. Focus on the long-term trends. Don't get caught up in the daily ups and downs, the headlines. Look at the bigger picture. How's the economy done over the past 10 years? How have your investments grown over time? Focusing on the long term helps us see past the noise, appreciate that steady growth, the power of compounding.
That's a good point. It's easy to lose sight of that when you're in the thick of things.
Right. Yeah, totally. Another thing is to actually celebrate the progress we make, even the small steps. Hit a savings goal, paid off debt, reached a financial milestone. Take the time to appreciate those wins, no matter how small they seem.
Like we need to savor those positive moments, give them as much weight as we give the negative ones.
Exactly. Cultivate that gratitude. Recognize that progress, even when it's slow, it's still progress.
It's so true. We get caught up in what's next, what's wrong, that we forget to appreciate how far we've come.
Right. And this brings us to the last bit of advice Housel gives. How to navigate this complex financial world, make decisions that fit our values and goals.
Okay, what are his key recommendations?
Well, he starts by saying, understand your own psychology, your financial fingerprint, those experiences and biases that shape how you see money. Be honest with yourself about strengths, weaknesses, your tendencies, your triggers, so you can make choices that really fit who you are.
Like become our own financial therapist.
Aha, yeah, kind of. Dig deep, figure out those beliefs and patterns that are driving how you handle money.
And once we get that, then we can build strategies and systems that work for us.
Exactly. If you know you're impulsive, set up automatic savings, make a budget to track your spending, set yourself up for success.
It's about putting those guardrails in place, knowing our limits, so we keep moving in the right direction.
And he's big on humility, too. We don't have all the answers. The financial world's always changing. We're going to make mistakes.
It's being okay with not knowing everything, asking for help when we need it.
Exactly. And that ties into his advice about uncertainty. Avoid being overconfident, but don't get stuck overthinking everything either. Focus on what you can control, saving, investing, spending, keep learning and growing.
Finding that middle ground, being prepared, but also flexible. Taking risks, but protecting yourself too.
Right. And most importantly, he reminds us, money is a tool to create a meaningful life. But we decide what that means. It's not about keeping up with others or chasing some definition of success. It's about making choices with your money that match your values, what you truly want to do in the world.
So it's not just financial success, it's about life success. Using money to build a life that feels authentic, fulfilling.
Exactly. That's the ultimate goal. Using our resources to support the life we want to live, a life that reflects our values, our passions.
This has been amazing. So many insightful ideas, practical strategies. What's the biggest takeaway for you from the psychology of money?
You know, for me, it's realizing that money is about more than just the numbers. It's about understanding ourselves, our hopes, our fears, the stories we believe, the choices we make every day. It's embracing the human side of money and using that to make decisions that are not just smart, but also deeply aligned with who we are.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a pleasure exploring this book with you, and I hope everyone listening has gotten some valuable insights, something to help them on their own financial journeys with more clarity, confidence, and purpose.
Absolutely. And remember, this isn't the end. Keep learning, keep asking questions, keep building that life that feels rich and meaningful in every way.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the psychology of money. We'll see you next time for another exploration of the ideas that shape our world.